Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sarah Newman, and I'm excited to bring you the 26th episode of Mixed Media, The Paper Wishes Way. Today, we're going to explore and do a bit of virtual traveling with the Lady Vagabond set from our friends at Stamperia. This is a steampunk-inspired collection with beautifully patterned papers, rice papers, stamps, and more. We'll look at some fun ways to use these elements to create easy mixed media looks. I'm really glad that you're joining us today, so come play with us. Let's take a closer look at the Lady Vagabond collection. We can begin with our patterned papers. Now this set has 10 double-sided sheets in an 8-inch by 8-inch size, and you're going to have 56 cutout messages and embellishments. You can see some of them here. I'll show you some more in the back. Plus lots of beautiful imagery and, of course, all over patterns. Really great for card making. Now you can see the theme here is a steampunk look. You've got some old-fashioned elements like script, maps, old books, clocks, and compasses. And you've also got kind of a Victorian vibe in here as well. A little bit of sci-fi maybe too. It's a really cool style with themes of imagination and travel. Now, what I really like about these cutouts here, you can see on this side, you've got one style. On the other side, you've got something completely different. Here are some more of those beautiful cutouts. Really nice images that you can easily use on the front or on the inside of your card. So that's the patterned paper pack. Now we also have rice paper. So let's start with our Lady Vagabond. You can see her here. She's ready to travel. We've got the flying ship, which I think is maybe one of my top favorites. We have the clock Lady Vagabond, nice big clock image, as well as some smaller sentiments on here. Then we've got Strange London, which is a really cool map effect. And also you've got a separate section down here. And then where it says Strange London Guide, one can only imagine. And then we've got the luggage set. Now, what's great about any of these rice papers is that you can use the entire sheet as it is. And these are 11 by 3/4 by 8 1/4. So it's a nice big size. You can also cut or tear apart the rice paper to use it in pieces. And rice paper is kind of like a cross between tissue paper and mulberry paper. It's really easy to use, and we'll talk about some techniques in today's webisode. Okay, so we also have the Lady Vagabond stencil. I'll lift this up so you can see. You've got lots of different images on here. This is also a nice big size of stencil. Great way to add some texture and dimension to your projects. Okay, now this piece here, this is not included in the bundle, but this is more of a visual for you. So these are the Lady Vagabond die cuts. Now, obviously, this is just a printout with a screenshot of what these would look like. This set has over 40 chipboard elements that I unfortunately do not have. So we came up a bit short in between mailing things between Hungary, which is where Stamperia is located, and the US, which is where Hot Off the Press is located, and Germany, which is where I am located. So unfortunately, I do not have a real pack to show you, but I can show you this visual and you can get an idea of the kinds of items in the pack. Now, these are not true to size. Many of these elements are actually quite substantial. Others are smaller and work great just as a little focal piece element. So as with all Stamperia die cut collections, they're fabulous quality and make a really easy embellishment on a project. Okay, now last but definitely not least, we have a gorgeous stamp set. And I'm really excited about this because I found that Stamperia's red rubber stamps are some of the very best quality in terms of detail. So I'm really pleased to have some of these in this week's webisode. We'll take a look at how to use these. Now you can use them as a focal. You've got a nice big image here with our Lady Vagabond and with the stacked suitcases and the books. And you've also got some smaller elements that work really beautifully as a card embellishment. Let me show you where I've just used that little key right here, right onto my pattern paper. Great way to accent and embellish some of the beautiful background papers in this collection. Okay, so now that we've seen all of the wonderful things that we're working with today, let's take a look at some simple mixed media ways to put them to use. Let's take a look at this card. So here we're using the pattern paper as our background, and you can see that I've accented the edges with gold foil. I've also done some splattering here on the background too. So let's take a look at how we can add gold foiling onto our pattern paper, and we'll start with the edges. So for this, I just need my trusty glue stick, and of course also my Wow Fab foil, and I'm using the gold for this one. So I'm going to set my card to one side, and I'll bring in this sheet of gorgeous pattern paper, which is what I used for my card front. Now, you know with the Wow Fab foil that you get a lot of foil on here, and what you can do is just easily snip off using your scissors little pieces if you're doing just the edges, and that's what I've done here. So I've got a couple of little scraps here that I've cut off, and then I can save my bigger pieces for my background. Okay, now for this, all I need to do is just take that glue stick, and I'm just going to kind of scrub this along here. Okay, so I've got it along the top and the side, or the bottom and the side. And then all I will do is just stick my foil right on here. And I'm going to press to make sure that that is really secure on there. And then I'm just going to let this set aside to dry. So I'm going to leave this on here and let this do its magic. Now, while I'm waiting for that to happen, let's bring in the stencil and take a look at this. So you can see here I've got lots of elements that I can choose from. I'm going to do some stenciling with some of the words here. So I'm just going to grab the stencil and a couple of other things that I want to have on hand. I'm going to be using my trusty Prism ink pads from Hunky Dory, and the color that I'm using here is Thundercloud. I'm also going to use the Hot Off the Press blender brush, and I love these little guys. These just work beautifully for applying ink through my stencils. Now, one thing about this stencil, it is super flexible. So it's actually meant to go around curved surfaces. So you could use some repositionable adhesive to help keep it in place if you wanted to stencil maybe some glassware, for example. But I'm just going to go with my paper here. So I'm going to position my stencil in place. Now I can hold this down, but I can also use some of the Hunky Dory stencil tape, and this is probably going to come in a lot handier because I know I want to mask off certain elements as well. So I'm going to pop some of this down just to mask off some of these smaller elements that I don't want to accidentally get stenciled on there. And let's see, mask off this area here too. And we'll see how the rest of this turns out. Okay, so I've got my Thundercloud dye-based ink, and I'm just going to get a little bit of the ink here on my blending tool, and then just gently work in kind of a circular motion, and you can start to see those words emerge. And I like the Thundercloud because it's just a nice soft kind of gray, dark gray color. And it works beautifully for stenciling because it will give you the impact of whatever it is that you're stenciling. But it's not quite as stark as black. So let's see here. I think you can see how this is coming along. I can see the journey. I think I need my Y on there. And you can see how easily this is stenciling and how beautifully this will come out. And this is one of my favorite ways to use stencils. Now, obviously, you can also use this with your texture pastes as well, but I find a good sturdy blending tool and ink will do the trick. So I know I haven't got all of that quite yet, but let's lift this up and you can see how that is coming out. Now I used it onto an area of the stencil that doesn't have a whole lot of dark patterning on it, so it's just got some faint words on there, and I think that comes along really beautifully. Okay, so now let's take a look and see how our foiling is going. So in the space of time that it's taken us to stencil part of our words, I'm just going to pull this off, and you can see that my foiling is on here so beautifully. So that is ready to go as well. I really like how that looks. Now, those of you frugal crafters among us, and I count myself in here, you know that you've removed most of the foil from this little snippet, but you've still got another bit of it over here. So what I like to do is just use that as I'm going around my outside edges and make the most of getting all of that beautiful foil off of there. Okay, so now once this is all done, I can bring back in my card and let's take a look and see how this is coming together. So you can see all of my foiling around the outside edges. You can see that I've stamped that key element here. So that's one of the stamps from the stamp set. And that I have stamped with black StazOn. And the reason I use StazOn rather than the Prism dye ink is because I was stamping on top of some of that foil. So I really wanted to make sure, because the foil is a non-porous surface, that I was able to stamp on it without the ink then smearing. Okay, so really simple ways to make the most of this collection on here. Now, with the rest of the card, I've got the Lady Vagabond cutout image here. She's up on foam tape, and she's got a stack of books that she's kind of standing on. These are layered up also with foam tape. The sentiment here is a cutout, also on foam tape, and that's giving me a little bit of dimension here too. So I've got my pattern background paper, I've got my stamping, my stenciling, and then she's kind of walking forward here. Now on the card inside, I have another bit of pattern paper with some foiling on it. I have a cutout from the collection. This is a message in a bottle, which is really fun. And then I've got more of the thundercloud stenciling on here as well. So really quick and easy to do. A great way to combine that stencil in there. Now, as I mentioned, we've also got some gold spattering here on the card. Maybe if I tilt that, you can see where this is, not just on the edges, but also onto the background. And you probably can see it a little bit more here on this card project too. So the foiling is going all the way across here. Now, this is another way to add foil onto your pattern paper with white glue and my favorite Distress Splatter brush. So this is one of those great techniques that can really make the most of your pattern paper. So let's take a closer look at this process. With this card, I have my beautiful blue background pattern paper, and the gold splattered foiling on here just adds a really nice touch of shine without taking away from any of that gorgeous patterning on here. So this foiling is a different application process than our glue stick. So let's take a look at how to do this. I'm going to move aside my card and bring in another piece of that beautiful pattern background paper. Got some of my gold foil on hand as well, and then also my specialist glue from Creative Expressions. And I've got a bit of this onto some wax paper just so I can move it in and out quickly from the camera. Normally I would just put it right onto my craft mat. Now the other thing I'm going to have on hand is my Distress Splatter brush. So what I'll do here, this is a little bit wet, but I'm going to add a little bit more water here just so I can make a slightly watery wash of my white glue. Just dip that right into the bristles and then splatter. So I'm splattering this directly onto my pattern background paper. I know it's probably pretty tricky to see, so we'll have to wait until the magic is done. But quickly, I'm going to take my gold foil and I'm going to smooth this on here. really want to make sure that the foil is making contact with my watery glue, and you can kind of see where it's stuck on there. So I'm going to set this aside to dry. You can put a book or a craft block, an acrylic block on top if you want to, and just wait for this to dry. Now, while this is drying, let's take another look. I want to point out here that I've got this big, beautiful clock on here. Now, this is rice paper, and we took a look at some of the rice paper designs that we have, but let's talk about how to actually do something with the rice paper. So here's a partial sheet that, as you can see, I've put to use on another card. Now, rice paper it's kind of a combination between mulberry paper and tissue paper. So it's got some fibers like mulberry paper does, but it's nice and lightweight and translucent like tissue paper. Now, if you've ever done traditional decoupage and you ended up with air bubbles and frustrating things like that, that doesn't happen with rice paper, which is what I love. And of course, you also get these beautiful designs on here. You can cut this with scissors. You can also tear it. And if you want to tear it along the edge of a design, what I suggest you do is take a damp paintbrush and just use that to kind of trace or draw a line on here. Really make sure that you're getting it saturated on there. And then you can simply tear along the edges. If you come across any thicker fibers, those mulberry fibers, you can just snip those with a pair of scissors. And so then that way you get this nice kind of feathery edge. And that will sort of blend into your background when you adhere it onto whatever surface you're gluing it onto. I would wait for that to dry a little bit so that you know that you've got it positioned the way you want it to. So I've got a couple of pieces here. I've got this cut out from the pattern paper pack, and I have a portion of this clock rice paper that you can see I've already torn around the outside edge there. So while I have my slightly diluted glue here, I'm just going to take that same brush and pick up some of that watery glue, and I'm going to apply the adhesive onto my paper rather than applying it onto the rice paper. So I'm going to put it onto the surface that I'm gluing my rice paper onto, because this is a sturdier weight and it will accept the watery, gluey medium a little bit better, more easily than the rice paper will. Then I can just pop this down however I want it to go. Tap it down gently, and then if I have any little bits that are kind of coming up like this, just come back with that brush and work the edges. So here you can see where those edges are kind of blending in, and you can go over the top if you want to. It's not necessary though. And then just let this set aside to air dry. And then when that's done, you can trim around the outside edge and you will have a beautiful element onto which you can do some more stamping or foiling or add more cutouts. So lots and lots of different things that you can do once this is all dry and ready to go. Okay, let's take another look. Let's check on our foiling here, see how this has come out. And I'm just going to grab an edge of this. And there we go. So just in the time that it took me to do that rice paper, I've got some beautiful foiling on here. Now I have quite a lot of that gold foiling going on. If you wanted to do less, of course, just moderate how much of the glue you are splattering on there. So looks really good. Okay, let's come back to the card that I showed you. Here we go. So here's my clock. I've got some gold foiling on top of this. So of course you can do your foiling on top of the rice paper as well. I've also got some more stenciling down here, again using the Thundercloud ink pad. And in fact, I use that to go around the outside edge of my entire card. I've got my key stamped on here. Again, I have stamped this with StazOn because of course when I'm doing the foiling and making that a non-porous surface, I want to make sure that I'm using an ink, and StazOn is going to do the trick, an ink that will not smear or blur or get all over the place. Now also here for my card focal, this is a couple of cutouts from the paper pack. mounted up onto foam tape. And then for the card inside, I've just continued this theme with another piece of foiled pattern paper and another cutout and another little bit of ribbon here. Okay, another card that I want to show you. This card also shows many of the same techniques. So I've got another cutout card focal here mounted on top of a scallop chipboard square piece from hot off the press. I use these a lot to create a frame and really help my focals stand out, especially when I'm using pattern background paper. I have some of the hinge cutouts here on the side just to add a little bit of style, plus a couple of knotted ribbons. Now you can see the background is pattern paper with that glue stick foiling, and I've got some rice paper stacked suitcases, which are glued here in the corner. Now for the card inside, I fussy cut the Lady Vagabond and added a sentiment cutout here. So she's kind of perched on the side of the card inside here. And although this looks complicated, it was actually quite easy to cut around. Okay, I have one more card project that I want to show you. And this last card is a really fun slimline design. Now we have again our pattern paper background plus rice paper. So I've got again another portion of that clock. I really made that go a long way. And I've got some books stacked along here used as a border, and these are cut out from the patterned paper background sheet. I have a circle chipboard piece that has been gold splattered, and this really cute cat, which is one of the cutouts. She's got some goggles on, and I just really adore that cat. So if you're like me and you're a book person who loves cats, this is a great combination. Now the stack of suitcases that you see here, this is one of the stamps from the stamp set. So I've stamped this twice. Here it is on a light pattern paper, so you can see the stacking of the suitcases. I also stamped it again onto some teal pattern paper and then cut it apart. And then this way I can just work in different colors of suitcases and just glue them one on top of the background design here. And then I can create my own custom stack of suitcases. And that's what I have done here. And then just glue those right onto the card front. And then for the card inside, I have another strip of paper, some more books stacked up together, and then a sentiment as well. And with this last design, I think you can see how much fun it is to virtually travel and explore the world with a very stylish Lady Vagabond, and I'm assuming this is her feline companion. I know that I've appreciated this a bit of escapism as I crafted with this collection. I think it's going to do us all a little bit of good in this time when we can't really travel so much. Thank you so very much for joining me today, and thank you for being a part of the Paper Wishes family. We're really glad that you're here with us. I can't wait to see what you create, and do be sure to leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately, and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, just see this webisode on paperwishes.com.